presented by the Boulder City Review. My name is Hallie Bernstein-Saylor. I'm the editor of the paper. I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank the candidates for coming. I want to give you a real quick rundown how we're going to do this. Each of the candidates were given 9 questions 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, so they had a chance to read them and come up with their answers, which all the questions were submitted by the community members. I put them in a bucket and I had them randomly selected tonight, so nobody knows except me what order the questions will be asked. Each person will get 3 minutes to answer. I am timing them so we can try to get through. I'm hoping that we will have time for 4 questions so that everybody has a chance to speak. I'm also going to ask each of the candidates to give a brief description or biography of themselves before we go ahead and start in the questions. They'll have 1.5 minutes. So let me introduce the candidates. Starting at this end, we have Trenton Motley, James Howard Adams, Rich Schuman, Councilman, incumbent Rich Schuman, Councilwoman Peggy Levitt, Claudia Bridges, Tom Tyler, and Judy DeShane. There are 8 candidates on the ballot. Everyone was invited, but it looks like we have 1 missing. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and start with Trenton. And if we'll just go down the line, and if everybody will have about a minute and a half. I do have signs here to tell you on your timing so you can be aware, and you can introduce yourself. And thank you again.
My name is Trenton Motley. I'm 21. I've lived here my whole life. I'm an engineering student at UNLV. I don't really have anything else to tell you about. I mean, it's pretty much the basics. I went to all the schools here. Yeah, 1.5 minutes seems like a lot of time to tell you about. Not that exciting of a life. So I'm going to give it up to James.
Thank you. My name is James Howard Adams. I'm 33 years old, and I've been a resident of Boulder City now for 24 years. I earned my degree in deaf studies from the College of Southern Nevada. Professionally, I work as a musician, graphic designer, and a concert and events promoter. I'm running for city council not because I think I have all the best answers for the city. I'm running because I believe those answers can be found within the community. Over the last couple of years, I've seen us start to head down a direction that I didn't want to follow, and I realized that if I wanted to actually see some change happen, I needed to be willing to be that change. So I'm looking forward to the conversation tonight. I always love any opportunity to talk about Boulder City. Thank you.
Hello everybody, thanks for coming tonight. It's a pleasure to be here. Rich Schuman, currently on the City Council and running for re-election. My family and I live in town here and have for a long time. I have 5 children and I'm raising the 4th generation of Schumans in Boulder City. I'm very proud of that. My great-grandmother first came to Boulder City, and my great-grandparents many years ago in the 50s. And, I'm running for re-election. It's been quite an honor to serve on the City Council for 4 years. It's been really the greatest honor of my professional life, and look forward to this campaign with these great candidates and being able to get my voice out there and continue to do some of the great work that we've done and keep going with some of the accomplishments that we've had in the last 4 years. And I hope that I have a chance to serve for another 4 years again. So thank you.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Peggy Levitt, and I want to thank the Boulder City Review for holding this forum. Thank you, Hallie and Celia. I originally was born and raised in Wyoming and graduated from the University of Wyoming. And I moved to Nevada in 1970. I was introduced to Boulder City in 1974. I was a social worker and I got a job at the Southern Nevada Children's Home. I don't know how many of you might remember that. It used to be on Adams where the library is now. So I worked as a social worker and was promoted to the superintendent. I worked there for 20 years. It was a long-term placement for abused and neglected children. So I often tell people I've literally had thousands of children in the school system throughout the years, including my own. I moved to Boulder City in 1984 when I met and married my husband, and he had 3 boys. And I said, if we're going to raise this family, we need to move to Boulder City. Then I worked at Child Haven for 10 years and I retired. I ran for city council for similar reasons that James said he's running for city council. I wanted to make a positive change in the community, and I figured that running for city council was the way that I could do it. It too has been an honor for me to serve on city council, and I appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Claudia Bridges, and I am a resident of Boulder City and have been for 7 years. We moved here from Sacramento, where I lived for 10 years, and before that Phoenix, and originally from Chicago. We moved here, I was just telling someone, we came to visit some friends of my husband at work, had suggested we take a look at Boulder City as a place to finish his career and retire. We came on a Thursday, and on Saturday we bought a house and fell in love with this place. Went back, sold the house in California, and made this our permanent home. I had a vision of what Boulder City was when we moved here, and I'd like to be part of that, part of what brings that vision closer to what the reality is of this community. I love living here. I plan to spend the rest of our lives here. We have a lovely home in the historic district. My background is I have a bachelor's degree from Northeastern Illinois University and an MBA and PhD from Arizona State. My background's in both finance and marketing, and I was in academia until I retired 7 years ago. And I think that I bring a lot of experience and background and knowledge to this possible position for me, and I hope you vote for me.
Hello, my name is Tom Tyler. I moved here in 1991 with my family. I was a service brat. I moved every 2 years of my life. I've been all around the world, and you can't believe what a jewel Boulder City is to me. My kids grew up here. They swam in the swim teams, the park department, everything was a great way to live. They both got scholarships, went to great schools, and they came back to Boulder City, and they're raising their grandkids. Oh, my grandkids are now. So I'm very proud of Boulder City, and I'm very proud that my kids like it here just like I do. And I'm trying to keep that atmosphere for my grandchildren like I had and they had. I transferred here from Albertsons and Safeway Company. I worked in Southern California. I lived in Long Beach. So I was able to just transfer up to the Nevada area, and I retired from this. The last 6 years, I've been doing a lot of volunteer work. I'm really interested in the town. I have a lot vested in it, and I just want to do a good job for Boulder City. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Judy DeShane. I was born and raised in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and that's where I went to school, and I graduated from the College of St. Catherine's in St. Paul. We moved to Phoenix about 30 years ago to get out of the cold, and we always thought we could go back if we wanted to. We've never had the inclination to go back. We never missed snow in the winter, so we didn't even drive to Flagstaff. So we moved up here to Boulder City about 5 years ago because we have children that live in the area, and we love it here. I don't think I've missed more than a couple of Boulder City council meetings in the last 3 to 4 years. I go to every one. I go to the planning commission meetings. I bug the people at Historic Preservation and sometimes Parks and Rec. So I have a great interest in what happens in Boulder City, and I want it to be the best for everybody. And I think we can do that with input from our citizens and working together. I really think we can do a good job. So I would appreciate, you get 2 votes for city council people. I would like one of them, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll go backwards, and we'll start with you, Judy. You'll each have 3 minutes to answer these questions. Our first question is, what are your thoughts on historic preservation and repurposing city-owned buildings? Go ahead.
I think historic preservation, I really would like to see the city do something positive with it. I think it's good. I think it's good for our future as well as now. The repurposing buildings is great, but I think we really need to make sure we repurpose a building for something that's appropriate to the area that the building is in. And I also would like to see, when it's determined that a building is going to be repurposed, I think it would be a good idea before the final decision is made as to what it's going to be repurposed for. Talk to the citizens and get some input. One way or another, the citizens are going to wind up paying for it, either because a public building is being taken out of the realm, because if you repurpose and lease it to a private business, you know, citizens are not going to really have the access that they would have if it stayed in the public realm. And the other thing is, if it's something the city is going to repurpose it and it's going to be for city use, repurposed, the citizens will be paying for it with their tax dollars. So I really think it's important to get input from the city before a final decision is made on repurposing. But I would like to see it happen.
I'm a little biased on the subject because I'm the president of Emergency Aid, and I've been in the Water and Power Building. We've been there 8 years, and we're under a study to maybe find another location. I'm all for preserving our buildings and that, and I have no objections to the city using the buildings as they want. I'm just concerned that that everything is planned ahead. That 12 years ago they wanted something else for the building, but they never have included what to do with emergency aid. They always have great ideas what to do with the buildings, but they don't have any idea what to do with the people that are already there. So I'm all for whatever the city wants, but I would just like to be cooperative with everybody. So thank you.
Well, as a result of some unfortunate events, the historic hospital, which I know is a privately owned building, was torn down after we bought our home across the street. That was part of the impetus that I had for going ahead and running for city council. After that event, actually, while it was in progress, I researched the preservation ordinances, because I thought for sure there would be good stuff in there that would be convincing that they couldn't do what they were going to do. And what I discovered is they did not contain the teeth to ask anyone to conform to anything. That someone could get a demolition permit on a historic building out of spite was shocking, even if it was private property, as is the case with the Boulder building. I believe that we have a commitment to maintain the story of Boulder City through its buildings and its institutions. What's good is historic preservation is now on everybody's radar. And it's a shame that it's taken so long. Having a CLG designation, grant funding, enforceable ordinances, and owner incentives, so it doesn't all have to be the stick, it can be the carrot, are ways to move in that direction to have a formidable historic preservation initiative. I'm also aware that the city-owned buildings are being inventoried right now by Stantec, and I understand they're going to evaluate the best use for them. Some may change purpose, Some may be sold, hopefully to a foundation with a mission to maintain the integrity of the building. And some may go from being abandoned relics to glorious opportunities to draw interest. I have a lot of ideas, as do many people in our community, of what could become of a lot of these buildings, such as, say, the water filtration plant. I was thinking a foundation purchases it and gets grant money and private donation to turn it into a water museum. But how do we keep it maintained? See, once you have the money, you still have to keep it going. Do we get ongoing grant funds, a joint project with outside agencies, a bookstore, a paid museum, an art gallery? Those are all issues that remain to be discussed. Overall, a community commitment to preserving our historic assets, preservation ordinances with enforceable regulations, incentives for businesses and homeowners looking to maintain their historic buildings, and input from local groups and residents can put us on the right track.
I think it's exciting to see so much energy and enthusiasm around historic preservation in Boulder City. I think it's also important to recognize some of the historic preservation efforts in our recent history as well. The preservation and restoration of the Boulder Dam Hotel and Museum were a monumental effort by our community to save that building, and it's a great example of repurposing a building. I told this story at the Alliance Forum the other night that when I first ran for council, the Boulder Dam Hotel was in disrepair and not thriving at that time, and one of the owners of a business in that downtown historic district said to me, the best use of that building is to take a bulldozer and just knock it down and use it and build a parking lot there. So the fact that the community and the city came together to save that building is so important to Boulder City. It's the hub of that downtown area. It's a thriving business now, and all of the businesses around it are better off because that building was saved. Additionally, the Boulder Dam Museum has an outstanding educational outreach as well to our local students and students around the valley. I learned a lot from a historic preservation panel that was hosted by the Historic Preservation Committee a year ago. One of the things that I learned is that even within the historic preservation community, there's debate about historic preservation and the best way or method to achieve it. Heidi Swank, who's an assemblywoman and the executive director of the Nevada Preservation Foundation, indicated in her remarks as part of that panel that there is a misunderstanding of what constitutes historic preservation. Assemblywoman Swank commented that historic preservation is a balance between change and maintaining historic integrity. One panelist commented that Boulder City needs to decide what its narrative is and then select which buildings tell the narrative best and decide that those are the ones we are going to save. Dennis McBride, whom I think we all know, who's the director of the Nevada State Museum and former resident of Boulder City, said that the original narrative of Boulder City is the construction of Hoover Dam. Another is the mid-century modern buildings or the mid-50s look that would be exemplified by our downtown motels. Basically, he said we need to prioritize what buildings are important to keep and come up with a plan. Mark Hall Patton, who is the administrator of the Clark County Museum, said, you cannot save everything. It has to make sense economically. They have to find good adaptive reuses to keep important buildings around. It's easy to get money to save a building, but not to pay the electric bill. So somebody has to pay the ongoing costs. So that's why repurposing is so important. Thank you.
All right, historic preservation. So we had a strategic planning meeting here in this room, and I can tell you that there was general consensus, a unanimous consensus of the 5 city council members and really all of staff that this is one of our one of our strategic goals is to have historic preservation at the top of the list. I believe this is one of those things that we kind of all agree on. I think all the candidates up here are going to agree on it as well. So I'm going to try to answer the question a little differently and give you an idea of how we can go a little deeper with historic preservation. To me, historic preservation is preserving our history. One thing that we talked about at this strategic meeting, and kind of a phrase that I came up with, was historic promotion. And I think that goes in line with repurposing buildings. So I believe that we need to promote our history and do a better job at talking about our history, and in turn that will preserve our history. So repurposing our buildings, using our buildings, putting tenants or uses into these buildings is the only way you're going to preserve the buildings themselves. Otherwise, over time, they will crumble. They will fall if they're not being utilized and used. So certainly repurposing is important, in utilizing those historic structures. I believe that we should not knock down any historic properties anywhere, anytime. That's the character of our city. And when I think about historic preservation, that's what I think about is, you know, what did it look like 30 years ago when I was a kid in this town? And what will it look like 30 years from now when my kids are grown up in this town? So it's not only preserving our downtown core and our historic buildings, but it's preserving our traditions, and it's preserving our parks and our roadways, and it's so much deeper than just the buildings themselves. And when I think about preserving our history, that's what it is. It's deeper than just the buildings themselves. It's really traditions and remembering who we are as a city and who came before us, and the great work that people did in the city, and preserving the people that had such an impact in our city, and really getting out and talking about that, celebrating those people and promoting those people. So maybe that's a little different answer than you'll get, but I do agree with the other candidates and many of the things that they're saying, but I just wanted to kind of expand on that a little bit.
So I think historic preservation is of utmost importance when it comes to looking for ordinances or strengthening our ordinances and codes to provide real protection. We don't have to look very far. Currently, the city of Las Vegas has stronger protections for its historic districts than historic Boulder City. I don't think that's appropriate. The National Park Service has standards and guidelines that are recognized by communities large and small throughout this country to protect their heritage and to protect their history. Boulder City used to be one of those towns. Our original ordinance could have prevented the demolition of the historic hospital. Now, we can blame past councils for dismantling the language that allowed that demolition to occur, but since that demolition of the hospital, 2 more buildings in our historic district have demolition permits pulled right now. There are no expiration dates for them. So when we talk about strengthening codes and strengthening ordinances, you know, there are actions that could have been taken long ago. You know, it's unfortunate that only now, right before, you know, an election, does it become the priority that it rightfully is. I think, you know, our history is not just ours, it's not just the city's, it's our nation's as well. The Hoover Dam redefined the American Southwest. You know, we need laws and ordinances that reflect the importance of our cultural heritage and the importance of our story in this great nation. Thank you.
So, like Rich said, we kind of all agree on this, so I'm about to beat a dead horse for you all. It's incredibly important. We are a historic town. We have one of the greatest engineering feats probably ever right down the street from us. And we also have a strategic plan, and we just really need to get behind that strategic plan and keep that going, and I believe that we will succeed with the historic preservation now. I think it's been talked about enough, and that we've got it going. We've got the ball rolling. We just have to keep it going. So, thank you.
Thank you all. Our next question, we'll go ahead and start with Rich and go down that way, and then we'll go to Peggy and go down that way. Our question is, do you have any concerns about the present levels of the city's indebtedness, and what are your thoughts about incurring future debt?
Well, that's an interesting question coming off a budget meeting this morning. We talked about debt. So, do I have any concerns about current debt? At the moment, I don't. We have one debt. It's under control. We're not incurring any more debt. Can you say that question again? I didn't prepare for these questions at all. I just wanted to fly by the seat of my pants here.
Do you have any concerns about the present levels of the city's indebtedness, and what are your thoughts about incurring future debt?
Okay, future debt. I'm very careful about us incurring future debt, and we'll probably have another question later about that that you'll see on the ballot. But financial stewardship, means looking at any debt that the city can incur. There's things that happen, I've learned at City Council in the last 4 years that just come upon you that you can't avoid. So there's debt that we don't even know about that just could come out, and things that we have to fix, things that we have to do that could incur debt. So I remember first getting on council 4 years ago, and there was a large celebration for all the debt that we just paid off. It was golf course debt, it was interfund loan debt, and I remember seeing how gratified the council members were, Roger Tobler, or Mayor Tobler, and the others that had steadfast committed to paying off debt and accelerating debt to get that. To get that, and you could just see the burden come off their shoulders when that debt was paid off. So, being under the thumb of large amounts of debt is not healthy for anybody. It's not healthy for a city. It's not healthy for individuals, and I guess overall, I'm not a fan of incurring big debt. Good.
So when it comes to debt, current debt right now, I'm not concerned necessarily with the level of debt we have. As you said, we have one debt. It's manageable. Where my concern is how that debt was incurred, and the fact that we are obviously still having to pay it off. When we look towards, are we going to incur future debt, it has to be worth the investment. Is it going to be worth that? As we start to incur more things, when we talk about things like the pool, potentially $40–45 million. Once we go down that road, suddenly other projects that we might need, that might be necessary, become a lot less palatable. How much are we willing to stomach? Currently, we're dumping, over 1 million gallons of water a day out into the desert. If we don't get help from the Southern Nevada Water Authority, how much might that project be? That's a real valuable resource that's literally evaporating into thin air. So when we talk about debt, we need to know that what we are doing is going to be beneficial to us down the long road. But most importantly, it really is in the hands of the citizens. We get to vote when the city, for debts of $1 million or more. That's in the hands of the community. And there's a reason for that. At one point, the citizens felt that city council and staff couldn't be trusted to make those decisions. They felt that when the need to show proper restraint was there, they were unable to show that. And so we have a situation now where we actually get to approve of these debts. So I think that is the right course here for us in Boulder City. It makes us masters of our own domain. If it's something that we want to do, it's something that we can. So when it comes to the question of the pool, the question will be, is this something that the citizens want? And that's the most important thing. We can't be having a council that just runs and says, this is what we think is best, so we're going to do it. I think it's important that we have that ability here in town. Not a lot of communities have that authority, and we're very fortunate to have that. Thank you.
So I'm one of those people who, with having any debt, kind of stresses me out. I have a $300 limit on my credit card, and that's it. So yes, I have concerns about our current level of debt, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not that bad because it is only one debt. But it is also, we are also talking about an entire city, and things can get very expensive, and debt becomes unavoidable. But adding on double the debt we already have sounds a little drastic to me for a pool that's maybe a little overkill for the amount of people we have. And just because we have a certain loan limit doesn't mean we need to reach that limit, because that's how bad credit happens. Do cities have loan limits though? Is that a thing? Either way, adding more debt for wants and not needs is not a good financial decision in my eyes.
I, like Rich, am not concerned about our present level of indebtedness in the city, but I was on the council when we did inherit a lot of debt from previous council or councils, and that was during a recessionary time, and we aggressively paid down the debt. We had a financial plan that we aggressively paid down debt. During the last 8 years, the city has paid down our total indebtedness by $60 million. Unfortunately, because of the ballot initiative that James just alluded to, in which the city has to go out to the voters to spend over $1 million, that same ballot initiative precluded us from refinancing debt. So that was considered new debt by the bond council. So we were not able to refinance some of the debt that we inherited, or we could have saved millions more dollars. I also agree that future debt should only be considered for large capital improvement projects which are warranted and of benefit to the residents, and of course have voter approval.
As you've heard, the city has utility fund debt service from a raw water line that has a payoff of about $2.3 million per year. And yet I'm not sure that's an area for concern, because there's really not much we can do about it besides refinance it or pay it off as it is. It's part of the utility budget, and it needs to be paid from that fund. I guess the voters previously rejected paying it off from the capital improvement fund. It's currently 20% of the utility budget. My first concern has to do with the fact that the public is involved, like Peggy was saying, with the decision to refinance the debt. Since there are things that, details involved in this, and that usually a debt refinancing decision has to be made quickly to take advantage of fluctuations in the bond market. And that can't be done if you have to hold off till a certain time to have a vote as to whether to refinance that bond. Secondly, I understand that the debt was taken out not necessarily based on what the current needs for the community were, and that that decision was made based on certain assumptions, and it turned out to be a costly one. Speculation is an assumption that should not be used in the acquisition of debt. If we do incur debt, it should be for current projects and services that directly address the needs of our current population, and that all options and sources of funding should be reviewed before a decision like that is made. Prudent financial stewardship demands a commitment to setting realistic budgets and obtaining bids that accurately reflect the scope of the job. Sometimes we might be putting the cart before the horse. So it's about long-term budgeting so that the payoff of debt will be realistic in terms of our revenues. And that we will continue to have that source of revenue necessary to pay off that debt. Thank you.
I have a tendency to believe the incumbents that we're not problems right now with our current debt, but my main concern is our utilities. Increasing rates aren't going to fix our electrical grid. Another revenue stream is going to have to be found. I'm thinking that by redirecting our land lease income from the general fund to a universal fund might be the answer. I know there's a lot of laws about transferring money between funds, but if a universal fund was set up, I think that 20% would be diverted to the general fund, and the rest could be used for special projects, such as helping our electrical grid or working with doing the pool. So I think that we need to start thinking out of the box a little bit and finding sources of incomes to help problem areas, and not worry about finding ways to tax and things like that. Thank you.
The 26.5 mil we still owe on the raw water line, I'm not concerned with. I would be concerned to take on more debt at this point in time. Everybody has seen their water and electric bills go up considerably over the last 3-4 years. It's to pay for infrastructure and also to help service the debt that we've got sitting out there. The $20-30 a month isn't a lot to many of us. I mean, we really don't notice it. But it is a lot to some of our senior citizens and some of our very young families that have 2-3 kids and one income. And that's pretty hard to come up with that extra money. And these people aren't going out to eat, they aren't going out for a beer or anything like that. They're living very frugally, but they still need that, and they need to rely on emergency aid to help them out with their grocery bills. They're keeping a roof over their head, but they do rely on emergency aid to help them out. So I think we have to be cognizant of that, and we need to come up, as Tom said, a different kind of revenue stream that doesn't impact some of these people's pocketbook as badly as it is, because it is hurting a lot of people. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and we'll start the next question with Trenton, and we'll just work our way down. This question we also asked at the Mayor's Forum, and we found it to be very enlightening, so I hope you also enjoy it. The question is, which political figure in the United States do you most consistently align yourself with philosophically?
The one question I didn't write any notes down on, and that honestly really comes down to me not philosophically agreeing with many politicians. To be honest with you, I've never been a politician. This is the first political thing I've ever done, and that was only because I felt it was needed, and I felt I needed to step in. And so I don't have a politician that I align myself with philosophically. Maybe more like a country singer, like George Strait or something. I don't know about a politician. So that's really all I have to say about that.
All right, yeah, so this is a fun one, huh? I picked an answer that I think will probably get a few chuckles out of the audience. It's not necessarily that I philosophically align with this person on every issue, but it's somebody that I definitely admire. That's Dennis Kucinich. I know, he's an eccentric character, and I myself have been called an eccentric character as well. In 2008, when he was running for president, we were in the middle of the Iraq War. He was the one person with a platform of peace, talking about peace. Now, we can all mock that idea, say that it's a weak position to have. We can say that it is impossible or unobtainable. But he believed in setting the tone. If we want to talk about these big, grandiose ideas and we want to accomplish them, we have to start by talking about them. We'll never approach those answers if we're not willing to talk about them. When we start to talk about tone, I look at our city council and where we're at right now. Traditionally, we have public comment times of 5 minutes. That public comment time has now been cut down to 3 minutes. We used to have language in BCTV, the ordinance, that promoted public participation in that channel. That language was removed. Is that the tone that we want to be setting? Is that the tone that we're listening to the citizens? It doesn't feel like it to me. And so yes, I do appreciate the importance of setting tone and setting those discussions. Like I said, I don't necessarily always philosophically align myself with Mr. Kucinich, but I did admire that ability to really want to push for that. You know, when we want to accomplish something, we have to talk about it. And talking and communicating is a two-way street, and that's something that I think the city needs now more than anything.
So this is the one question I did prepare for. Kind of interesting what happened too after I prepared for this. So I was thinking about this a lot actually, because I remember having this question at the first candidates forum 4 years ago, or the one that we did 4 years ago, and I forget, it was during I think a presidential election. I forget what I said, Marco Rubio or something, I don't know, these national guys. But the thing is, with the national politics, is it's so left and right now. It's like, you know, there's nobody in the middle anymore. So I can't pick anybody on that national level. So I started to think, okay, let's answer this a little differently, and I started to think of a better way to answer it. And so the question is, who do I philosophically align with? So I prepared to talk, to mention Commissioner Bruce Woodbury, who walked in and sat in the front row here. So that's why this question is so awkward for me, because I was going to mention him. As I've known Commissioner Woodbury, I've talked to people that know him, I've come to find that he would talk to anybody, and that he would listen to anybody, and that he was a consensus maker. He's one of the longest serving county commissioners in our history. At a time when a lot of the county commissioners were getting themselves in trouble, he was not. You wouldn't know what political party he's from. He wouldn't care what political party you're from. He is known as a bridge builder. He's known as somebody who could bring people together. And I haven't got to know him at that level and been with him when he was serving in those times. But these are the stories that I continue to hear over and over and over about Commissioner Woodbury. So that's who I picked. And there you go.
There have been several exceptional leaders of our country who have truly changed the course of history. It's almost as if they were chosen for their time, and I think Abraham Lincoln is such a man. We all know Abraham Lincoln as the president who presided over the Civil War, which ended slavery. He was also known for the Gettysburg Address, one of the most well-known, most profound, and beautifully written speeches in the history of our nation. Additionally, he wrote the Emancipation Proclamation, which led the way for all African Americans to become free of slavery and to the passage of the 13th Amendment to our Constitution. But what I want to talk to you tonight about is his unconventional governing ability in such a critical time in our nation's history. In her book, Team of Rivals, Doris Kearns Goodwin, a noted historian and Pulitzer Prize winner, chronicles how Lincoln had an extraordinary ability to make his opponents and severest critics into friends. In 1860, Lincoln emerged the victor from the Republican convention over his rivals, William Seward, Salmon Chase, and Edward Bates. These men were bitter and angry. They all believed the better man lost. All were better known, better educated, and had more experience in public life than Lincoln. But Lincoln took the unprecedented step of appointing all three to his cabinet. Seward became Secretary of State, Chase Secretary of Treasury, and Bates Attorney General. Lincoln was asked why he made these appointments, and his reply was, "We needed the strongest men of the party in the cabinet. I had no right to deprive the country of their service." Seward eventually became one of Lincoln's best friends and most loyal and effective supporters. I've summarized an almost 900-page book into a paragraph, but this book had a huge impact on me when I read it almost 10 years ago. I admired and still do that Lincoln put his country first and had the humility, vision, and courage to work with political adversaries in order to save his country, not unlike Nelson Mandela, who I know we're not supposed to talk about, someone who's not in the U.S., but I have great admiration for Nelson Mandela as well, who was imprisoned for over 20 years, and the people who actually jailed him, he brought into his government. So the truth is that I believe all of us sitting up here want to do what's best for Boulder City. And there are many things that we agree on. I'm committed, as several of my fellow candidates, and we've been to these different forums, have become friends, that irrespective of the outcome of this race, we are going to work together to move Boulder City forward.
Eleanor Roosevelt. Don't worry, I'm not reading a book report. I like Eleanor. No, it's. I really did try researching this, and I read about lots of people, which I love to do, and came upon her because I had read a book about her a long time ago, and she was unfettered by the belief at the time that women were only to sit on the sidelines of their husbands' political aspirations. She was involved in service, which as a passion of mine, and was concerned about the plight of the poor and stood up against discrimination. While she encouraged her husband, who was afflicted by illness, to continue his political path, she spoke out on topics that were important to her. She held press conferences and she wrote for the newspaper. She encouraged the U.S. to join and participate in the United Nations and oversaw the drafting of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. She was a woman who followed her own path and expressed her opinions about the inequities she observed. Even after her husband died, after serving 4 terms as president, she was appointed as a delegate to the United Nations. As she followed her path, I have followed mine through a career in marketing, raising a family, the acquisition of advanced degrees, and a career in academia. I was even awarded an opportunity by the university to study and teach the advantages of sustainable economic development, including a sabbatical working for a nonprofit in Africa. I've always been involved and currently involve myself in issues that are important to me, and I'm not afraid to speak out. While I don't assume myself to be of her caliber, I do find her to be an inspiration.
I've always admired Joe Lieberman. He started like a Democrat, and now he doesn't even recognize the Democrats. He's always been flexible. He's done as best he could for the people he worked for. He was vice president, nominate to, I forgot who he was to. I'm not a Democrat, I'm a Republican. In any event, he's always been flexible. He's been willing to see both sides. He's a survivor. He's always known who to be with. Friends of his were Republicans. He was always concerned about our national security, and he always had his priorities straight. And I think it's very important to prioritize what you believe in and to try to achieve that without being swayed by outside influences in that. And I truly believe that Lieberman has done a good job with that. So that's who I rely myself on.
I, like Trenton, had a real hard time with this one because I have never followed any specific politician by any means. So then I had to do research. The first 3 didn't pan out. I finally, my husband's suggestion of Dwight Eisenhower. And I thought, well, what the hell did he do? So anyway, I looked him up. It turns out he accomplished quite a bit, considering he wasn't a politician. In 1948, both the Democrats and the Republicans tried to talk him into running for president, and he said he had no political interest, and he refused. He never said which side he favored, Democrats or Republicans. In 1952, a Republican senator entered him in New Hampshire's primary without him really knowing about it. He garnered 25,000 votes in that primary, so he decided he'd probably better run. Well, and then during his term of office, he set up the truce between North and South Korea that is still holding today. He has appointed 5 justices to the Supreme Court, and it was he's the one that appointed Warren to the court. So we had the highway system still exists today that he came up with and does it proud, as we just had a new section, the first one in years, be added. And then Alaska and Hawaii both became the 49th and 50th state during his term. He managed to desegregate the military completely, and he also desegregated the public schools. He used the budget to get the military in line, and he used the 101st Airborne to help in Arkansas when they didn't want to desegregate. So he really was quite a formidable man. He considered the far left and the far right to be gutters, and always wrong, and despised them for hurling rocks from the gutter to those in the center. That opinion matches my own. Extremes on either side are not good or beneficial to our country, city, and state. Thank you.
Thank you all. Our next question. We're going to go ahead and we'll start with Judy and we'll go back that way. What are your thoughts regarding the proposed new aquatic center? Is it necessary? Should it be expanded to feature more amenities than the existing facility?
An aquatic cultural center is not necessary. A pool is. We definitely need a new pool. The old one seems to be crumbling and rusting away before our eyes. I'm not in favor of adding any amenities to it. The reason being that the pool is only going to last 25 to 30 years. So you put everything under one roof, 25 to 30 years, we have to take everything out and redo it because of the pool. Leave the pool as a standalone. It will get done much faster and the citizens will be able to use it, plus at a much less dollar cost. Then the other amenities that people think they want or whatever, we'll do those one at a time as money becomes available in the capital improvement budgets. And not only that, but that has the added thing, because you're going to have smaller units, space them around Broadbent Park or however, because too many people really like Broadbent Park and they don't want to see the whole thing go away and be dug up for this big complex. So it just makes more sense to do a little bit at a time. That way we'd also probably get the pool paid for before the new pool became the old pool and have to be replaced.
My daughter Katie Tyler is the swim coach for the swim team and has helped writing the pro and con for the purpose of the proposed pool complex. So I'm well versed in the subject. The public wanted a pool with a roof that could handle swim events and not a $40 million sports complex that completely revamps Broadbent Park. Now we own a pool that should be closed, and it will be years before it's replaced. If the sports complex fails, let's just build a pool and have the designer keep the racquetball courts in the design and build in the same footprint. Heritage Park is where all the swim team is occurring right now. They go down there. It's close as Smith's. And regretfully, I hate keep pouring money down to keeping that pool alive. We should just close it, mow it down, and build the new complex when we get it designed. I know that's especially unpopular with my daughter because she conducts her swim class in Boulder City, but seriously, why are we throwing all that money away, and why don't we save it for the new pool? And if we decide to do it, let's do it as fast as we can and just have a single unit like Julie suggests. But for sure, make it in the same footprint, and just bite the bullet for a while, and close the pool and have the people go to Henderson. Oops, sorry.
He says,
Pass it on.
okay, I think we need a new pool. I don't know how we ended up at $40 million. I've heard it explained to me. I think, like I said, I think the pool is necessary. However, it's unnecessarily expensive, and we probably should have started it out like I did when I put a pool in my house in Arizona, and you have a budget, and you put out for bids, and you develop the concept within the budget, and you base it on, and in this case, you would base it on public input. The current amount will be a significant amount of debt hanging over our heads. On the positive note, we do have a system that allows for our residents to vote on whether or not they support this initiative, including the acquisition of that level of debt. And that's what's coming up on the ballot initiative. I don't believe it needs to be an aquatic center or a community center so much as a swimming pool, maybe two, like heritage pools. For a town of our size, I don't think it needs workout rooms, a splash park, or meeting rooms. We have those. And I think that if we need new ones or we need to refurbish the ones we have, that should be a separate issue. What we need is showers, vending machines, an office, and an entry foyer. I believe that we need this for our students and our families and our future athletes and our senior citizens, but we need just a swimming pool.
I may be the holdout here. I think the proposed aquatic center is necessary, and 62% of the residents agreed in a recent survey and even supported the use of public funds to pay for the new center. A new pool complex is long overdue and has been talked about for years, even before I was on council. There have been statements that the process of determining what was needed in the aquatic center was flawed. However, the city did exactly what has been requested, and that was hosting at least 8 workshops and town hall meetings during the past year, soliciting feedback and input from our residents about what they wanted in a complex, just like what James was talking about. The funding being sought by this bonding question is the option that was chosen by the people in Boulder City. The issue has become not one of the necessity of the pool, but rather one of the anticipated costs of the construction of the pool, and the option chosen that includes a few amenities in addition to the pool. These costs include expenses over and above the estimated cost of the actual construction of the pool. They include architectural design services, construction management, contingencies, and inflation. These are all fees that are common in bonds. The city will be holding informational workshops so residents can get factual information and have their questions answered about this project, especially with respect to how bonding works and possible costs to the residents through property taxes. This process reminds me of what a colleague said at the LVCDA. He said, we ask our customers what they want, and then we give them what we want. I want Boulder City residents to get what they want and not have it dictated to them what they'll get. We all need to keep in mind, even if the ballot question passes, it will still take approximately 4 years for us to have a new pool. I think the voters need to speak and tell us what they want, and the city will continue to investigate alternative funding for the pool complex in order to alleviate an unnecessary tax burden to the residents.
Can you state the question one more time?
Sure. What are your thoughts regarding the proposed new aquatic center? Is it necessary? Should it be expanded to feature more amenities than the existing facility?
Okay. So I've spoken a lot about this at city council meetings. Obviously, we've batted this around for a couple of years now at least, and it's been in the works for a while. Number one, we absolutely need a pool there, and this goes right into historic preservation. This is, I remember my dad telling me stories of jumping in that pool for money on the 4th of July, and my kids now do that. And so part of our history is having a pool at that exact location, and I know that we will work hard to make sure that we have a pool at that location. The other part is that park, and if you ever need to find your classmates on the 4th of July, that's where they're going to be. If you come back once a year, that's where you're going to find your classmates, is under the shade of those big trees. So one of my concerns all along with this pool, with the aquatic complex, has been the integrity of that whole block, the whole corner. That's our history. That's been one of my biggest concerns. Now, what this aquatic complex looks like when it's finished, what happens there, we definitely need a new pool. It's crumbling, there could come a point where we're a poolless community. We're like on the verge of that. That pool, water is sinking into the ground from it, the equipment is rusted, it's seen its healthy life. So we need to replace it. But what that looks like, I'm not sure. That's not up to me. We've done a lot of surveys, we've done a lot of public outreach. What that final product looks like, I don't know. This huge complex that has been drawn out, you know what, I'm very pleased that that's going to the vote of the people, and that people can look at those renderings and say, do we want this, do we not want this, of that magnitude. Now, just remember that, and watch the city council meetings where we've talked about this, because we've done our best to educate the community on, that rendering that's out there that's been laid out. That's not a final drawing or anything. That's just what the consulting group came up with based on the survey results that we've seen. So it can be smaller, it could be bigger, it could be all different. Could take different shapes. So we don't know what that final is going to look like. We get into financing of it. That's where I have some concerns too, because I feel like there's sources of funding for that pool replacement that we haven't looked at yet. And I have some ideas on that, but I'm running out of time. But I think there's alternatives to financing that pool other than raising taxes, essentially. Although let's see what happens in the vote and see if that's what the community rallies behind. As James talks about a lot, that's where this idea needs to come from. This is completely up to the people of Boulder City, and I know that we've had enough public outreach and input in this, and will continue to do that, to where this will be truly a community facility when it's done.
I think the community has made their desire for a new pool very clear. The question is not, does the community want a new pool? Of course we do. The question is now, can we trust council and staff to be responsible with access to $45 million? Projects like the Boulder Creek Golf Course give many people great pots. That plagued us for quite some time. Just last night at the city council meeting where they approved the bond question that's going to be on the ballot, it was pointed out by one of the council members that the language was rather broad. It did not specifically say that it was for an aquatic center. It said that it was for recreation. It did not specify the location that it needed to be. It could theoretically be wherever. That's concerning. When the councilman pointed this out and asked the city attorney about this, the city attorney admitted that he himself had not spoken to the bond council. I don't think that's very appropriate. For the second time now in this process, when asked what would happen if we don't move on this, if we were to push this into the next council meeting so we have more time to review, they were told failure to move on this item now could jeopardize this, and it means we might not get it on the ballot. So we're pushing this along at this 11th hour. It gives council no time to review, no time to talk with the citizens about how they feel about this. And so once again, it comes back to, are we going to trust the composition of the council, whatever it may be, to be responsible with access to that amount of money? I'm very concerned right now because, like I said, we all want the pool. I was on the swim team as a kid. My sister was on the swim team. I understand just how important that community is. It really creates strong bonds. And I feel like we're setting this up for failure. What happens when it doesn't pass? It's been said that it's going to take 4 years to start breaking ground or before we complete this project. What happens if this doesn't pass? Do we have to start all over again from square one? You know, these are questions that I feel like aren't being answered. It's just, we need to do this now, and if we don't, then we'll never get it done. And I think that's unfortunate because, as I've said, and we all agree, we do want this new pool, and I don't feel that we're heading in that direction.
Is it necessary? Yes. Cracks were discovered in the current pool. The swim team can't hold meets at our current pool. And quite frankly, it's kind of old. And I don't know if you guys ever smelled the carpet in that front entryway when it's wet, but it's not the greatest smell ever. I in no way agree with spending anywhere close to $40 million on it though. Make it regulation, make a kid side, bring back diving boards. What's the rock wall thing? I don't get it. Keep all the current amenities, maybe the exception of a couple things. We have a city gym. It may be small, but it's there. It's right over by the library. We could expand it. There's an empty building right there in that same complex that we could use. We currently use our rec center for a group workout facility. They hold classes there all the time. Yeah, it'd be convenient to hold everything under one roof, but it would also jeopardize that whole park doing that. And as much as I don't like getting hit in the back of the head with confetti eggs on 4th of July, I still love it because it's part of the day. And in our town, there's really no need for something that's basically a Lifetime Fitness. I don't know if any of you guys ever seen Lifetime Fitness right there off Green Valley, but they have a pool, the gym, group workout rooms. They even have like free shaving cream in the bathroom, and I feel like that's really extra, to be honest with you. But yeah, so yes, a pool is necessary, but it's not $40 million necessary.